Number 8. Brandon Wilson. In September of 2017, Brandon Wilson, then in his late teens, broke into a house where he once lived as a foster child in Woodbury, South Jersey. Wilson had intended to burglarize the residence but was surprised to find 26-year-old Shaunique Carter, who was house-sitting for a friend, inside. He bludgeoned her with a metal bar from a gym weight and then stabbed her to death. Wilson tried to cover his tracks by cleaning up the scene before fleeing. Carter's body was found in a second-floor bedroom by her 5-year-old son and his cousin, also aged 5. They then wandered to a barbershop up the street and reported what they'd seen. In the 2-month-long investigation that followed, surveillance footage from another house on the street as well as physical evidence placed Wilson at the scene. He was charged while in custody at Cape May County Jail. In an unrelated case stemming from his extensive criminal record, his parents, David Wilson and Kim Ward, both in their early 50s, soon became part of the investigation as well. A shoe print was found on the premises, and detectives contacted the jail asking staff to remove Wilson's footwear for inspection. The suspect reportedly called his parents from jail and asked them to get rid of 2 pairs of shoes from their home. When officers arrived at their Paulsboro address, they recovered 2 pairs of sneakers from an attic and realized that they were wet and smelled of cleaning solution. David and Kim would subsequently plead guilty to hindering, a 3rd-degree charge that could result in a maximum sentence of 5 years, whereas Wilson was given 54 years in prison for Carter's murder. Today's featured fan shoutout is Instagram follower Maya Scarlett2. To appear in our next video, send us your pic rocking the latest merch from theywillkillyou.com and send it in to us on Instagram today. Number 7. Zachary Craven. In August of 2018, Washington man Zachary Craven, aged 27, was sentenced to 72 years in prison for a double homicide that had occurred several years earlier. Craven had been raised by his grandmother, Angelica Hayden, who'd maintained a loving relationship with him even as his life had begun spiraling out of control due to his methamphetamine addiction. She'd hoped he'd recover even after he'd committed multiple assaults against her, including one that involved killing her cat and another in which he'd bound her hands with electrical cord, demanding she give him money. He was charged with assault and a no-contact order was put in place to protect Hayden. On July the 7th of 2015, Craven went to her home in Skyway and fatally shot her in the head. He then headed towards the Renton home of his ex-girlfriend, Teresa Cunningham, undoubtedly with the intention of killing her as well. However, she and her family were away and house-sitting for them was Cunningham's best friend, Megan Smith, aged 21. Craven arrived at the residence and, upon encountering Smith, demanded a piggy bank that he and Cunningham used to share. He then executed Smith as well as his ex-girlfriend's elderly dog in the kitchen. About a week before his killing spree, Craven had failed to show up for court-ordered transportation to a drug treatment clinic. Smith's family would subsequently sue the Department of Corrections for what was deemed as a poor job of monitoring him, even though he was a convicted felon and an addict with a history of mental illness. Number 6. Valerie Graves. On December the 30th of 2013, a British woman was killed while house-sitting for friends at a waterfront property in the East Sussex village of Bosham. The owners had gone abroad for Christmas, leaving 55-year-old Valerie Graves, who lived in nearby Bracklesham Bay, to watch the home, estimated at over $2 million. Graves' body was discovered by one of her relatives in a ground-floor bedroom. She'd suffered fatal injuries after being bludgeoned with a claw hammer which was found less than half a mile from the property. Forensic analysis of DNA recovered from the scene established the killer was male, but for several years no suspects were identified. The police launched a massive DNA voluntary screening that examined over 3,000 men before ultimately fearing that the killer might never be caught. The crucial break in the case would come from a woman living in a rural part of Romania's Transylvania region. While looking through her husband's phone, 27-year-old Claudia Sabau had found Google searches about a murder in Bosham and a media-released picture of a hammer which looked like the one he had. She confronted her husband, Christian, who asked her not to break up with him and to keep quiet about the matter. Claudia, however, contacted British authorities. Before returning to Romania, Christian and his wife had been living in a caravan at a scrapyard along the A27. In Chichester, Sabau had done odd jobs at the home where Graves was killed. On the night of her death, he'd drunk a bottle of whiskey and cycled to the address. He'd broken in expecting to find the place empty, with the intention of stealing from a safe he'd believed to hold money and precious ingots. He found Graves inside and bludgeoned her to death, fearing she'd be able to identify him. Christian was arrested in his home country on a street that was named after Vlad the Impaler, where he'd been living with a new girlfriend and extradited to England. DNA evidence confirmed his estranged wife's early detective work, and he pleaded guilty to killing Graves in 2019. Number 5. Karen Smallwood. On October the 13th of 2004, while house-sitting for her aunt and uncle in New Mexico, 19-year-old mother of one, Ursula Duran, was shot dead. Her body was discovered by her boyfriend, also the father of her child, and by her mother, who then alerted the authorities. The young woman had been shot 5 times, twice at close range, and there were some grey hair strands clutched in her hand, presumably belonging to her attacker. 11 days after the murder, the aunt and uncle revealed that some items had been taken from their home, including Duran's ATM card and checkbook. The card was used at cash machines in New Mexico, Texas, and Arkansas before a final withdrawal occurred in Louisiana. Video from one of the ATMs showed an older woman, whom the aunt and uncle would identify as Karen Smallwood, who used to house sit for them. The 59-year-old had been living at a campground at the edge of town, and after a long time of not speaking with them, had contacted the couple to ask if they needed a house sitter. They said no, adding that their niece was taking care of the home. The police found a DNA match between Smallwood and the hair strands from the scene, while recovered casings proved to be of the same type as those of a 9mm handgun in her possession. Blood found inside the said gun was positively matched to Duran's. Smallwood was consequently sentenced to life in prison with a minimum of 30 years served. Number 4. Rebecca McCurdy. While house-sitting at an address in Osage County, Oklahoma, a mother of 2 was the victim of a brutal dog attack in June of 2021. Deputies from the sheriff's office were asked to perform a wellness check at the residence just west of Skiatook. It was there that they found the lifeless body of house-sitter Rebecca McCurdy, aged 28, who'd been mauled to death by a pit bull. There were several caged dogs which the owner claimed to be raising for profit in the garage. One of the cages was toppled over, and aside from the injuries on McCurdy's body, further evidence pointed to a dog attack. It's unclear what charges, if any, the owner would face. A GoFundMe was subsequently set up in McCurdy's name, meant to offer support to her family. Number 3. Elizabeth Bischoff. In May of 2019, police were called to a home in the Broadmoor neighborhood of Colorado Springs to the report of a theft. The homeowner, who chose not to disclose her identity, had had a broken arm for a few months and thus hadn't been wearing any jewelry. When she went to put on her Rolex, she realized that the watch, along with several other custom pieces, was missing. There were no signs of forced entry to indicate a break-in. The main suspect was 39-year-old Elizabeth Bischoff, a known dog and house sitter in the area, from whose services the homeowner had also benefited. Bischoff had sold $400,000 worth of jewelry to a company in Denver, claiming that she'd inherited the pieces. Upon examining the diamonds, the jewelers realized that they'd been custom cut in a particular store from New York. Further communication between the two companies revealed that Bischoff's pieces had actually been stolen. She was arrested in October and still had about $200,000 worth of jewelry in her possession, which she'd stashed away at a different home where she was pet sitting, unbeknownst to the owners. In the aftermath, Bischoff faced charges of second-degree burglary and theft. Today's topic was requested by Instagram follower N2B2B. If you have any other topics you'd like to learn about, subscribe and let us know in the comments section below, or follow us on Instagram and reach out to us there. Number 2. Michael Robles and Monica Caban. On July the 1st of 2020, a homeowner from Alamo Heights, Texas, called the local police department to report that her house had basically been stripped of its interior. Michael Robles and Monica Caban, both in their early 40s, were arrested and charged with theft of $150,000 to $300,000. The aptly dubbed house sitters from hell had been hired to watch the home while the owner was in Australia. During that time, they removed all interior doors, granite countertops from the kitchen, the oven, washer, dryer, window blinds, and even cabinets. Robles and Caban attempted to extract the windows and the air conditioning unit through a makeshift scaffold. The authorities reported that the house had been left in a dilapidated and unlivable condition after even items that were nailed down or attached to piping had been ripped from their supports. Aside from theft, Robles and Caban were also charged with 3 counts of drug possession with intent to sell and held at Bexar County Jail on a $25,000 bail. Number 1. Jacob Eveland. On May the 31st, a man in Elmer, Washington was stabbed, shot, and burned to death by a friend who'd been freshly released from jail. 47-year-old Roy Jones had been house-sitting for Jacob Eveland while he was doing a 30-day jail stint for domestic violence assault. Jones's grandmother was the one who'd driven him to the house on the night. She remembered waving at Eveland, who'd been released that same day before leaving. The next morning, she turned on the news and saw the house on fire, with reports claiming that a body, who she soon realized was her grandson, had been found in the front yard. Eveland had shot and stabbed Jones before setting his own house ablaze and fleeing the premises. The cause of the murder remained unclear, but Grays Harbor County Sheriff Rick Scott suspected that Eveland had committed it because of animosity that he had towards Jones over drug usage, drug theft. Eveland was arrested in Seattle and confessed to the killing, for which he was sentenced to 50 years in prison. Thanks for watching. Would you rather house sit for a mob boss or in a mansion that's reported to be haunted? Let us know in the comments section below.